have about their motions. That is scheduled for Monday, May 24th at 5 p.m., also on Zoom webinar. And our sewer director, David Gray, is going to give us a little bit of an update on the Surfside Road Sewer Improvement Project. David?
Thank you, Libby. I just happen to be up here on the site now just to try to give everyone a little bit of a view of how deep they happen to go. Last night we were down almost 18 feet while crossing over some of our local infrastructure that was in our way. The project's been moving along. They've had a couple of delays, and they have had to stay a little late a couple of nights because of trying to cross infrastructure and then backfill. But all in all, it's going very well. We're just crossing Bacchus Lane now, and we should hopefully get about 60 feet, I guess, tonight. Pending we don't run into a bunch of infrastructure.
Thanks, David. And I think maybe you just mentioned this. I don't know if I quite caught it. There has been some work lately that has exceeded the 2 a.m. stop. And I think there's been some complications with the depth of the project and conflicting utilities. And that's why that happened. But I think the idea here is that really not continue to the extent that it's absolutely not avoidable, unavoidable. Because it is really
Absolutely.
serving to nearby
Absolutely.
residents.
The biggest problem is the depth. Right now where we are, this is probably the deepest spot. We're going to start to get shallower now as we get towards Violet. And then once we get from Violet up, we'll be less than 10 feet in most areas. So the things will be able to shut down earlier. Last night was kind of an extreme case that we were crossing the town sewer, and there's a water main right next to the trench, and they were being overly cautious. So they've been spoken to, and they're going to try to keep it to the 2 o'clock the best they can unless something happens. But they're doing very well.
Thank you for that live feed, David.
That wraps up the announcements.
Yes.
Thank you. COVID-19 weekly update. If there are no public comments, which I don't see any hands raised, I will turn it right over to Roberto Santamaria.
Hello. So with things kind of slowing down and we're starting to wind down a lot of this, for the time being, I'm going to stop doing the PowerPoints because it's just kind of redundant at this point. What I am going to just quickly go over is how many cases we're doing, how we're doing with the positivity rate. We have 1,557 total cases since the beginning. We've had 32,288 tests. So we're in, let me do some quick and dirty math. I should have done this ahead of time. So we're at a less than 5% positivity rate from the very beginning, which is really great. It's better than most places in the country have done. So we should be really proud of that. And now that we have the vaccinations rolling out, we're in really great shape. And what I really want to just kind of get out there is now that we have hit the large scale group of vaccines, before people were coming to us to get vaccinated. Now we're actually we actually have to go to them. So for people who can't just make it to the VFW at the times that they're open. So what we're starting to do now is we receive the 1,000 dose shipment of the single dose vaccine. And if you want to host any sort of vaccination group, if you have a large scale group at your business or if you have a group of people, we are able to set up vaccine clinics at your place of business at the time that you need it to as well. And we are also able to set up a mobile clinic, which is great. And I'm having conversations with the superintendent, Dr. Hallett, so that we can set up a clinic at the school, hopefully next Wednesday for all the students ages 12 to 18 that are at the school. So keep an eye out for any communication on that. And then as far as the VFW goes, the NCH has made the decision that that they will not continue the VFW clinic past May. So, and in about 2 weeks, they will be closing down the clinic at the VFW and moving operations back to the hospital main campus. The town will be taking over any sort of standing clinic after that. We have extra vaccinators now. We're decentralizing, so ACT Dental Arts is available to provide doses. Dr. Pavi has said that she is able to give doses as soon as we can get some to her. Health Imperatives is providing doses now, and as well, we've already known that Dan's Pharmacy is providing doses. So with that, if you would like to contact us for any information regarding setting up any vaccine clinics, just let us know. Email us at health@nantucket-ma.gov, and we can go from there. More than anything, I want to hear your questions because we're going into the season, and I know that there's questions.
Christy?
Thank you. For using the mobile unit to go to job sites, is there any business that's too small, or kind of what's the limit? Do you need to have at least 10 employees to have the health department come?
Correct. If you're going to be doing the Johnson & Johnson, the single dose, which we highly recommend, you're hearing a lot of things about the clots and everything. So a quick information on the clots. It was six cases among 7 million doses. That is less of an adverse event than what you get from the flu shot. So that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is incredibly safe. And that whole 70% efficacy that you're hearing about, that's because they tested it against every variant. And that is the overall efficacy rate. If Pfizer and Moderna were to do the same thing where they tested it among the variants, you'll see the same outcome. So Johnson & Johnson is just as good as the Pfizer and Moderna. So we highly recommend getting that because it is one shot and you are fully vaccinated within 2 weeks after. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine comes in a 5-dose vial. So if you have five employees willing to get the dose, we can set you up with a clinic with 5. But also if you have less than 5, also contact us because we can set it up. Sometimes we can set it up, if you have 2 people, we can find 3 others so that we don't waste the vial. It's not, don't let that be a deterrent. Pfizer and Moderna are both in 10-dose vials. So we can go from there as well. Thank you, good question.
Yeah.
And I assume if we do it at the school, the kids will have to get permission and have things signed. Yes.
Yes. So a consent form. I did email Dr. Howard the consent form. So what we're working on the logistics. I have a meeting with her tomorrow. So more information will come out as we have it. But we will be able to send out the consent form, and with that, you would be as a parent, you'd be able to sign it, and the child can either bring it with them, or you can scan it and send it to us as well. You can also turn it in anytime before the clinic as well. But yes, the consent form does need to be signed by the parents.
The other question has the VFW slowed down? Are we seeing as numbers are slowing now? You have to go find them now.
Yes. So what we're running into is that the VFW is slowing down to the point that the hospital is actually losing too much money in personnel by staffing it. So they're going to be moving the operation to the Watkins room in their hospital where the original first few doses were given. And that way we can avoid wastage too, because what happens at the clinic and the VFW is we have to puncture the vial, do the dilution, do the mixing, and that vial is only good for 6 hours. So if they set it up at the hospital, they don't have to do a mass dilution of all the vaccine, and none of that gets wasted. It's an easier supply chain situation.
Melissa?
Thanks so much, Don. Thank you, Roberto. Not really a question, but I guess more of a statement that some testing capacity is also increased, and Act Dental Arts has the PCR tests available. You pay for it. I think you need to call the office if you're interested in having an insurance claim go with that. But you can call the office to make an appointment to get a PCR test, which can be really convenient for a lot of people. Is that right, Roberto?
Correct. They have a PCR machine, and it is a same day turnaround for them because they don't have to send it off and pool it and do any of that chain of custody stuff. So it can be a same day turnaround. They're doing it there, and they're also letting us know if they get any positives. So far, all negatives that they've had.
Great.
But they are also reporting correctly and everything.
Great. And you may have mentioned it, but Health Imperatives also is doing vaccines, and that's a walk-in clinic, so I think from my perspective, we're really trending in a very positive feeling direction where our caseload is coming down, and we've expanded testing availability and vaccination availability. So I feel as a community, we're in a really good spot at the moment.
Correct. You can get your vaccines at 5 different locations now, or 4 different locations. Sorry, my own math is messed up. The town is offering it. NCH is offering it. Dr. Pavi is offering it. Sunny is Health Imperatives, is offering it, and Dan. So it is 5. I was right the first time. And Dan's Pharmacy is offering it. So it's exactly what we were hoping for when we were first talking about vaccine rollout back in January, that in May we would have this decentralized multiple location vaccination point. So we're right on track.
Can I just, one thing, in Roberto, now the hospital is doing all of their stop the spread PCR testing by appointment, correct? And that goes until the end of June?
Correct. Yes, okay. That is going until the end of June. So, I think your best bet would be to call them. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know exactly how to set up an appointment. Call it's 508-825-1000 is their main line. So you can set up an appointment at the.
Thank you. Melissa, did you have a follow-up?
I did. Ooh, but on that, I do know the Stop the Spread. It's really easy on the hospital's website, their COVID-19 page. It takes you right to the appointment page, and it's fairly easy to schedule that asymptomatic test from there. I did have another comment, but I can't remember what it was, so I'll turn it over back to you.
Okay, thank you. Christy?
Thank you. With gearing up for this season and expecting a busy season, are we able to get more vaccines on island so that if people are coming here for an extended stay, they'll be able to get vaccinated?
Yes. So right now we have the 1,000 doses, and we're expecting that's going to take a couple weeks to get through. But the state has already said by going through walk-in at Gillette and Fenway and all that, as well, going through walk-in, what that means is that there's actually more supply than there is demand at this point. So when I spoke to the state last week, they said that if we have to request any more, they can get it to us within 48 hours. So they are requesting that we do Johnson & Johnson because in a seasonal community like ours, chances of somebody being able to come back for their second dose is slim. So if we can set up more Johnson & Johnson clinics is better. You may even see us right out by the boats, right when the boats get in, get your shot here.
Melissa?
I remembered my question now. Thank you. Roberto, did you have any updated numbers on vaccinations by ethnicity for us?
Oh, by ethnicity. Should look that one up.
And if you need to take a minute and we can come back to it. I don't mean to put you under pressure, but I'm just wondering if we're seeing that trend improve. Thank you.
A little bit. From what last time I looked, it's improving a little bit, but not a lot. We do need to do some concentrated effort, and that's where Health Imperatives really kind of helps. They're really in tune with our population that we're having trouble connecting with as the government. Because that's the other part. We are the government. and the population we're trying to reach is here, and a lot of them don't trust the government for very good reasons. You know, the United States government has not treated immigrants and minorities well, especially in medicine. If for anyone at home who wants to know any history on this, just look up the Tuskegee syphilis study. That will give you all the background you need as to how poorly we treated minorities in this country. So groups like Dan and Dr. Pavi in the ACT Dental Arts and Sunny and her crew at Health Imperatives, they're filling in that gap that we just can't. And we're more than happy to supply them with extra vaccine. We can transfer doses to them as they need it. So if they have much more success than we do, the more vaccines we get out there, the better. I know I see Brooke's hand is up too, but I know Brooke is working really, really hard on this, and she's doing their group that she's working with is doing excellent work. And I would suggest probably Brooke talking while I look up the report.
Brooke, would you like to speak?
Yes, hi, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out one of the things that is changing is the amount of demographic information that people will be required to provide when they get a vaccine. It will just be first and last name and date of birth. So there's a lot less data collection, which hopefully will make it more comfortable for folks who are less comfortable providing a lot of personal information to official organizations, I'll say. So that's a big change as well. So I thought I'd share that information. And I also wanted to say that we had not been getting a lot of people at the Stop and Shop on Saturday morning. And with the advent of new ways to get vaccine that will be more accessible, we're going to be working more toward getting information out about those methods of getting a vaccine rather than helping people at the Stop and Shop. So we've suspended that program for the time being.
Thank you.
I
go ahead.
Data now, so I can share my screen to show the data. For some reason, I can't. Just a second. Please don't. Okay, here we go. Now I can share the screen. So I'm going to move pretty quickly, so avert your eyes if you get motion sickness. Let me scroll down to Nantucket. Sorry. And here we go. So our demographic information here, the most, what we want to see is these three columns. Is that big enough that people can read it? Okay. So it is it is kind of coming up, but it is still too low. So the Hispanic community is coming in a little bit more than expected, but don't forget that this census number is underreported by about threefold. So even though it says 13% of the total, or 63% of the total Hispanic population, that number is more around 35%. So we do have a lot of ways to go, and it's the same thing with our other minority communities here. So we are working on it. It is just slow and arduous process. I can forward this for the record if you need it as well. But we're on our way, and it's slow. And what we're going to see is that number slowly creep up. So there's a rule called there's a planning group rule that we call the Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of your time is spent doing the 20% of the work. We're in that last 20% here, and we're going to be spending a lot of time. So that 1,000 Johnson & Johnson doses that we have may take a month and a half to go through that supply. Whereas if this was February, we were doing 1,000 doses in a week. So we're just going to see a little bit slower progress, but any progress is progress.
Thank you. The Economic Task Force, Christy?
Yes, thank you. Just a short update because Amy's going to be updating us on outdoor dining. But we did have the Tap into Technology grant that we received through the state to work with the Vineyard. We just had the deadline this past week, and we had 18 businesses apply for 8 different grants. So those winners will be announced this week, and then they'll be moving into working with consultants and improving their business for this season. We also have posters with the QR code. The town has a website for the 2021 season that will continuously be updated on all things kind of how to eat, stay, and play on Nantucket. And those are available at 25 Federal Street. So if any business wants to have one in their window, they can swing by and grab one. And then lastly, we're going to focus our next meeting on outdoor dining for the future, kind of post-COVID, and being able to provide the select board with a proposal of how we think it might work in the future. So that was a small update, but big things happening.
Great, thank you. Amy Baxter, you're up next. Events and outdoor activities.
Thank you so much. As far as outdoor dining today, we placed the final cement barriers for some of the street closures and parking closures. We added barriers at Still Dock and Easy Street, which is behind the club car, for their dining. We also closed off some parking spaces directly in front of Boarding House and the Pearl on Federal Street for their dining. And then the third location is something we approved last year but didn't execute because of timing, which is on India Street. India Street, it's not fully closed. There's just barriers in front of proprietors. And then also down in front of Company of the Cauldron. They're planning on putting decking in front of their locations later this week or this weekend to provide more stable area for dining as well. So we did that today to give us a few days to kind of watch that, remove that parking and shift it over the traffic to the other side and see how that flows. So that was done today. So the only thing additional will be, obviously, there's a bunch of sidewalk areas that haven't been set up yet. Restaurants not quite opening yet, mostly over on, I think, Broad Street, those restaurants that will still set up. So the restaurants on Main Street, Rosencrantz and South Water have set up and started to operate already. So we're going to be working with all of them on their setups and working on the conditions and obviously all the obligations of having public space, cleaning up and spacing, ADA requirements, all of that, working with folks. Certainly something I'd like to publicly acknowledge too with all of this is last year we had mostly just the restaurants and some retail operating and fewer people. It is going to be much busier this year. We certainly have, more businesses open. So there's going to be very little room for the spread that happened in some locations or any sort of, pushing beyond the space that we have been able to provide. So just hopefully everyone is aware of that and works together with their neighbors that we've been trying to do to make sure that all businesses are accessible and operating safely this summer. So I was going to go into a couple updates on the state guidance for gatherings in restaurants. Are there any questions on the outdoor dining specifically?
Jason?
Just a comment. Thanks, Madam Chair. It seems this year people planned more and it looks just like a step up, better chairs, not everywhere, but it just seems like a little more organized and the layout's better. And which is what we were hoping for, is why we brought this conversation up in January, February, March. So vendors could prepare. So it just looks a little nicer. And I think we'll, not that it wasn't nice before, but it looks like we've had a year to plan, and I can tell. And so thank you, Amy. I know you had a lot to do with that.
If I may respond.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So it's all the restaurants as far as the setup and all of that. And one point I know that Christy brought up as far as our discussion on the economic task force, and we're going to review with other towns and see what other folks are planning, and speaking with the state for future planning. A lot of restaurants said that that discussion was important before they, really invested in things for expansions or outdoor dining, if that's something that moved into the future. So I know a lot of them have expressed interest in investing in things should we move in some way, shape, or form into the future. But it certainly is the restaurants. Some of them have made some of those tables themselves and acquired some of those things with a different trade option. So they deserve that credit for all of that, for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other reports, comments, updates? Oh, Amy?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to just real quick, I was just going to review what we have coming up in guidance for events in restaurants. May the 10th, that was this Monday, correct? There was a bit of an update where indoor singing is allowed again with certain spacing requirements between those singing and the audience and between performers. But again, that's another step in that direction to allow that for those establishments that have a live entertainment license indoors. And we have coming up May 29th, further release of some of these restrictions. Most notably, the gatherings limits, that there's no distinction now between public and private spaces. The gathering limit will go up to 200, maximum of 200 people indoors and 250 outdoors. And for restaurants, it'll increase to 10 people per table. Right now it's 6. Those bars and breweries that had been closed in the state because they did not provide food service are allowed to be opened. Obviously our brewery and places like Chicken Box did have a food permit last year, but at this point in time on May 29th, food will not be required to be served. They're still required to be seated service at all these locations if they have an on-premise liquor license, but they will not be required to serve food or have that food permit for places, again, like Chicken Box or the brewery. They will still have a 90-minute service limit, seated service, and no dance floors in these establishments just yet for the May 29th. So we'll have some further updates with the state. And one other thing for folks that keep asking, looking on the state website for updated guidance, aside from those high points, the state generally seems to be updating the specific sector-specific protocols a few days before these things go into an effect. And what they do is things that are no longer required are removed. So if it's not there, it's not required anymore, which is a little frustrating because we don't always know what they take out. It's so long, things like what you place on the table, salt, pepper, you couldn't do that before, now you can, but it's not there, so people don't know. So I just wanted to highlight that. We're trying to keep track of that, but if it's there, that's required. If it's no longer there, then the state has removed it. So hopefully we're going to meet with the state in, I think, a week to get some more updates on that so that we can help folks with the reopening as we get into June. And I think that's it for that.
Jason, then Christy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amy, is it, did I read it right where April 1st walk-up service to a bar will be able to stop, assuming things go in the right direction?
August 1st?
Yeah, did I say, yeah, August 1st.
Yeah, it's been March for a year. August 1st, possibly August 1st should be, I mean, that's the expectation, is a release of all those restrictions, probably still guidance. And I guess we've made this distinction in other meetings that it's become guidance rather than orders in some respects. So I believe so, if things are moving in the right direction, it will be.
To follow up, so locally, could we move that to September 1st, or do we have that authority? We might not want to do anything major like that in August. And I apologize to the bars on the island, but so Roberto, you're shaking your head. Yes, we could wait till the fall if we wanted to.
Or as long as the emergency declaration is in place, we can issue emergency orders locally to make things stricter than the state.
Okay, thank you.
And generally, I know that in Boston has been dragging behind the state a couple weeks too as well. They've taken their time to come out of some of these sectors. One other point too, I know people have asked for things such as the outdoor dining order and to-go alcohol in some of these establishments. The rule is till the end of the state of emergency, or for dining, end of the state of emergency plus 60 days. Folks have asked on August 1st, does that mean the state of emergency is over? Likely no. As Roberto has said, state of emergency is going to involve other things. There's still going to probably be time to understand, when we go back into winter, how this works and all of that. So no, we don't expect it to be August 1st. So we have approved it until the end of the year, till stroll or the end of December there. So we do expect to get through the fall still being in a state of emergency, so that it wouldn't be, yanked suddenly because of that.
Christine?
Thank you. Just a comment and then a question similar to Jason. I was on a call with the state's Office of Economic Development last week, and they had said August 1st is kind of the timeline and goal, but it could be before that. So I just hope that we're, preparing that it could be, before August 1st, and we're ready for that. And then my question is, with when August 1st comes, or whatever date it is, and you no longer have to be seated for service, is that going to be something where outdoor, that's also in effect? So all the outdoor dining that we've put out, you would be able to drink without being seated, or is that something that we would locally have to restrict?
I think, and Roberto can certainly comment after me, I think the outdoor dining was certainly meant to expand the space they had to provide the seating that they are normally allowed to have. And also because folks, regardless of these restrictions, are going to want to be outside. I think, that'll still be allowed. I mean, my recommendation would be that it's for seated dining service only, and that the current licensed, bars and such, fine, but that the outdoor seating was solely set up to provide that expanded space for seated dinings. Everyone, I would think that's our position on that.
Now, if the state of emergency was lifted in the state of Massachusetts, then we could not enact any local restrictions.
The only way we would be to go and create a new regulation, and that would be a public hearing, 3 weeks notice, whole nine yards.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that we would if the state of emergency. I'm just wanted to clarify that point, that because it's not unheard of that could happen. The state of Florida has lifted their state of emergency, so I'm sure that other states will start to follow suit. And I'm sure we're a ways behind, but that could happen before August 1st. Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, or more a comment. Some of the restaurants that I've talked to, I've sort of emphasized with them to, if they want this to continue in future years, that it really has to be done well this year. I think there's going to be a real, I think that the public really likes the outdoor dining. If they want that to continue, it can't be sort of mayhem this summer, or the recommendation from staff, and we will have no choice but to follow it, will be not to ever do it again. And so I think it's really important that they don't sort of try to stretch try to play fast and loose with it, and I think so. Christy made a great point. This isn't to have, Mardi Gras outside every night. This isn't to have drinking on the entire wharf. This is really to help these businesses out. Otherwise, we won't have the staff to handle it, and it will not happen in the future. And I think it's been well received, and we'd like to find a way to have it go forward. So, everyone I talk to, I beg them to, be very careful.
Are there any other questions or comments? I think that probably ends our COVID-19 discussion for this evening. Okay. I will move on to public comment. Thank you, everyone. I will move on to public comment for items not related to COVID-19 or not otherwise on our agenda for discussion this evening. Deanne Atherton, are you looking to make a public comment?
Yes, please, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you so much for addressing you and the members of the board and the public. My name is Deanne Atherton, and I am speaking this evening in my role as the coordinator for the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. Our comment relates to the appeal of the Concom's denial of the expansion of the geotubes in Sconset that was filed by SBPF in July of 2019, nearly 2 years ago. We understood that on April 30th, SBPF and the town jointly asked the judge to delay the hearing in this matter that had been scheduled for last Thursday, May 6th. The Coastal Conservancy and the Land Council and the Greenhill family took the highly unusual step of writing a joint letter to Judge Wilkins, the Superior Court, asking him to deny the request for delay and to proceed with the planned hearing. A main reason advanced in the request for the delay was the idea that the Arcadis-Baxter Road project could resolve the issues regarding the proposed geotubes. We totally disagree. To the contrary, we believe that a decision by Judge Wilkins could have informed the Arcadis project by clarifying at long last the legal issues regarding the geotubes. We'd like to make sure you are aware of the letter, which Erica kindly forwarded to you, and urge you to read it. We are extremely disappointed and frustrated by the continuing delay. And in closing, I want to note and draw your attention to the special Concom meeting scheduled for this coming Monday to consider the ongoing violations of the order of conditions for the existing geotubes, including a worsening violation of the #1 failure criterion for this project, and that is the requirement that the permit holder apply the amounts of sand specified in the order of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Are there any other public comments this evening of items that are not otherwise on our agenda for discussion? I'm not seeing any other hands. I don't believe that we have any new business. We'll move on to approval of minutes, treasury warrants, and pending contracts, unless there are any questions or comments on any of those.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy.
I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm going to abstain from the
Okay.
approving them.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Next up, we have citizen and departmental requests. The sewer department requests for a waiver of the town noise bylaw from May 13th through 20th, 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. to replace broken sewer manhole frames and covers, Washington Street and Meter Street and Prospect Street at number 6. I believe David Gray is here.
Yes. Hi, Don. Thank
How
you.
you doing, David?
I just left the job site, so a little quieter now. The request for the waivers are so we can actually get into the center lane down on Washington Street, a meter to replace a cover and a frame that is getting ready to fail on us. It's cracked severely and it cannot wait until the project starts in the fall. And the second request was for up on Prospect Street. On the corner, just before you get to Milk, you'll notice that the road is starting to settle in one area. And we want to get in and get around that manhole to see what's going on down there. And we can only do that one at night. And that was at the request of the police department, just because of traffic issues.
Are there questions on this?
And it's Matt again, not a question, just a comment. If you wonder, are we a little city? We are. This is what happens, in cities. They only can work at night because you're so busy, during the day in these urban areas. It's, I wish there were a way around it, but there really isn't. So.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And we're just trying to do it so that we're out of the way for all traffic, and we hope to get in and out fairly quickly.
Thanks, David. We know. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Nat Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have public hearing to consider renewal of private shellfish aquaculture license for Jamie Marks and for Pocomo Meadows LLC. Jeff Carlson.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. These first two items, these are for renewals for two active leaseholders, one in Cascada Pond, and Pocomo Meadows is over in the Pocomo Meadows area, which is just off of Medui Creek in Pocomo. Both those leaseholders are active and actively working those leases and are meeting all our requirements. And we're recommending that those leases can be renewed for the full 10 years that they've been requested. And we'll keep an eye on them and monitor them as we do with all the other leases.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to close the public hearing unless the board has any questions. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Just a quick question for Jeff.
Okay.
Matt, you get reports from these two guys. What are the trends you're seeing in the reports?
Sure. So the trends we've seen from both of those, I'd say over kind of the last lease period, especially for Pocomo Meadows, their production has actually increased over time. And they've been doing a pretty good job with that. Mr. Marks in Cascada has kind of transitioned species from oysters to clams, and has moved around a little bit, but they seem to be both active enough that they're doing well enough to continue. So I'd say overall it's been pretty good.
Right. Yeah. The reason, because I had talked to Steve Bender, and what he said is one of the differences he's seen is there used to be more eelgrass in the area, and he was able to do more stuff on the bottom. And now, within 5 or 6 years, everything's had to be has to be sort of off the bottom. So, he said it's within this license, there's been a substantial change.
Yeah, as far as, excuse me, Matt. So as far as site conditions, especially the site in Pocomo, there definitely has been our other leaseholder there on a different site. They've seen some shoaling over time in those areas and some sand accretion. And that's definitely caused some issues as far as a little bit of eelgrass smothering in areas and a little bit of transitioning gear on those two sites specifically. But we do have some backup sites if those guys need to move within Pulpus Harbor, and then some area up in the head of the harbor that we kind of hold to be able to adapt for those guys if their lease is no longer viable for other environmental considerations.
I'll move approval of both.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Nat Fee,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have a public hearing to consider the revocation of a private shellfish aquaculture license held by Theodore Lambrecht. I'll open the public hearing. Jeff?
Sure. So good evening again. We're here in this case for the opposite reason. One of the main requirements of the lease is that the lease remain active, and the regulations require that if a lease has been inactive for a period of 3 years, that we're compelled to pursue revocation of that lease. That what brings us here today is Mr. Lambert, from our records and reporting, hasn't actively been using that lease. And after reviewing the dormancy with SHAB and some concern about some gear that's still on the bottom that's been left, We found that that lease is not in compliance. And again, we are recommending revocation based on the inactivity. Just to clear up, if the lease does come back open again after revocation, the first step is that it goes to anyone on the waiting list that's been interested. We currently have 3 individuals on the waiting list that will go in order of who signed up first. If they become available again, and hopefully we can get those leases back active and working and cleaned up and in compliance and in production to meet our regulatory requirements. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Mr. Lambrecht? Just unmute yourself. You're still muted.
How's that?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Okay. I ran into some difficulties for a period of time, and I have now had everything, all the ducks in a row and ready to go. I've spent the last 8 months redoing the boat and gear, and I'm ready to carry on in all 3 leases. We ran into some problems last year when I would have been working the lease last year, but I was told not to. And so I couldn't do anything with it. So I started reworking the boat late in the summer, and I've been working on that till this day, today. Since that point in time, I am ready to go, and I have gear out. I've got the experience. I've got probably $20,000 in labor this year, just in gear and boat, not counting another 1,200 hours on myself. And I'm just looking forward to trying to get all 3 leases back into place again and active. I have a very good plan going forward. I've got my help hired for the summer. I've got seed. It's already been paid for as of last year, but I wasn't allowed to put it out. So I've been trying to get it going, and I just need to have the okay of working the lease from the town.
Jeff, what's the process for him to go back with his proposed kind of business plan to SHAB and see if this could be worked out?
Sure. So I'm happy to answer that unless Matt had a question that you'd like to take first.
Well, I was going to ask something similar, so I'll wait.
Sure. So just to kind of run through the process again, we monitor these leases on an annual basis at a minimum. And in the last couple of years, we actually do physical inspections once a week as required by the DMF and monitor that. When we notice a lease that's fallen out of compliance and for inactivity for that period of 3 years, we provide notice to the applicant. We ask them to cease work. We've had issues in the past where we send that notice out and then someone suddenly starts to work again and just say, I've ordered something, I've done something, I'm really working, and it's not necessarily the case. And then we take it to SHAB and we put it in front of them and we document the situation in the period of inactivity. In this case, SHAB heard and set some pretty hard deadlines and gave a period of about 6 to 8 months to get active and get the lease back into any kind of compliance. The date that they had set came and went without any activity on the leases.
We're having technical difficulties.
And sorry about that. And understanding that there, people have difficulties and things. We took it to SHAB and tried to work to resolve the issue. And I think we felt at the end of the day that significant progress hadn't been made. And, we're definitely sympathetic to everyone's personal situation and attempted to resolve it, but feel that it's in fairness to the other guys that are in compliance and work their leases actively, and the folks on the waiting list that these leases be returned back for people to give it a go.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, one of the comments was Ted, you were told not to work last year. What was that? Who told you that? Why was that? What do you mean by that?
Oh, you're muted.
I'm getting all kinds of technical. Am I back there? Come on.
No, you are. We can hear you.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
make sure you mute yourself again when you're done speaking.
I know I keep losing my internet connection here. So I missed the last portion of what Jeff was talking about. The resources department was going through their procedure last year, and through the COVID thing and everything else, communications were very difficult between myself and Jeff and the department. And hence it stretched all the way from the spring until September before we were able to get to the SHAB portion of that, at which time that we've hashed it out. They set a deadline of April 15th to have X amount of gear off the bottom. I just could not make that deadline. I am ready to do it now. I'm trying to get the last portion of this boat renovations in place. I mean, it's all set up specifically for this and specifically for hauling the gear and working the oysters. Am I still with you?
Yes.
You are.
If you're done, just mute
Yeah, just
yourself again.
a follow-up. You said this is a three. Do you have 3 leases, or how much land?
I do. I have two in the head of the harbor, one on the Cascada for overwintering gear. The majority of my gear is at the head of the harbor right now, and I am ready to haul it up. I have hauled a couple of cages. They will come up. I won't have a difficulty with that.
Jeff?
So just to clarify on those leases, one of those leases did expire previously and no renewal was requested on that lease. That's why there's 2 in front of you today.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, the department has notified me in the past when renewal was upcoming, and I had never heard anything about that until after the fact. Otherwise, I would have jumped on it right away. As far as that, I'm not even sure which one it is that was up, to tell you the truth. When at some point when we got the Cascada leases, it was stated that all the leases would come together in the same time frame, and they renew all of them in the same time frame. I didn't know they were staggered.
Jeff?
So our renewal process for any lease, and we did 2 earlier tonight, and not to be contradictory, we typically provide people a hard copy of their lease, and then through their annual reporting we get in. But the leaseholders that we've all renewed previously have all submitted written requests for renewal, and that's something that we hold their responsibility as their active leaseholder to maintain. Whether it be insurance or the active lease is their responsibility to do. We do send out a yearly. We've started to send out a yearly kind of billing for their lease payment and their licensure to be filed. But actual renewal, we have typically not sent out that letter to them. That's been something been driven by the leaseholder themselves.
Jason?
Just to get it straight in my head. So Mr. Lambrick has 3 lease spaces, and if we were to revoke this, he would be left with 1. Is that what I'm hearing? No.
If I may, he currently holds 2. One of them is expired and no longer active. So it is that lease is available, but we're waiting to resolve this issue before moving forward.
And when did these 2 expire?
These 2 don't expire until, I believe, 2025.
Okay. What's the normal lease length?
They typically are renewed for 10-year time periods.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to speak, you can raise your hand. Do other board members have questions? Matt?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a question, but once you close the public hearing, I have a suggestion.
Well, are we ready to close this out and make a decision? Or do we think that any more information is needed?
Well, then I'll make a question. Because I'm sort of thinking, what would be the harm of giving? One of them is gone and up for lease at this point. I'm thinking, my thought is give Ted a year to to perform, and say and revisit this in a year. you know, and if hopefully it's hopefully the 2 leases that remain are one where he can over harbor the oysters and one where he can have it for the summer. Hopefully it's those 2, but so anyway, that's my thought. If that would work, would that be possible, Jeff?
Some of that was still moved. Just to clarify, again, Mr. Lambert only holds 2 active leases, and I was just getting straight. Is the suggestion to let him work one of those leases and hold the other one, or was the suggestion to just let it go for a year?
I think
My suggestion is to let him work the two, let him work the 2 leases and see, give it and give him, till this time next year, or give him one and get to this time next year. I would hate to take if one of the locations is necessary to overwinter the product, I would want to make sure that was available.
So just to clarify, the 2 leases are up both in the deep water sites up in the head of the harbor, that are floating gear sites, and folks do overwinter on that site. Our concern, again, that kind of prompted this, is the last gear that was installed made it to the bottom and then hasn't moved now for almost 4 years, and creates not only a hazard to navigation, but some concerns about the viability of that gear and working it, and just maintaining the gear in good compliance and good order that's required by the lease.
So there are kind of two issues here. It's the gear itself and the viability and the compliance, and then it's that it hasn't been nothing's been being produced. I mean, I kind of am feeling a little bit like Matt, where with COVID over this past year, and maybe there were circumstances prior to that, because it sounds like this has been a little bit of an issue for 3 years. Can we do another chance here to at least have a discussion about how to get the gear into compliance? And if that can't be worked out, we could extend this public hearing for a couple of weeks, for this to be discussed. And then maybe we could see if that can be worked out, then maybe we can see if we can get production over the next year before we go to this extreme. But Christine?
Thank you. Just a clarification from Jeff. The SHAB has already asked for that to be removed and it wasn't. Is that correct?
Correct. We were back in SHAB in the autumn of last year to discuss this and moving forward. And then after a number of months of discussion and getting updates on progress, I think SHAB felt frustrated with the lack of progress and set that April 15th date for work to be done, boat to be in the water and things. That deadline was not met. And I know SHAB discussed it to great length and decided that they supported the revocation that the regulations were kind of bringing about, after a number of months of trying to get activity.
Mr. Lambrecht?
Yeah. Part of the problem with not being able to get everything done in the time frame that was allotted is the fact that I had last October, the last week of October, fell and ripped my shoulder. Rotator cuff was gone, the muscle detached from the scapula. I pushed through, I was pushing through that period of time all the way up until January to try to get this darn thing done. And basically I had no use of my right hand, which is my predominant right hand. Decided to have surgery, which it has been done. It was done just about the time that the April 15th deadline was put into place. I have been doing the rehab since then. It's supposed to be a 4 to 6 month recovery. I've gotten back probably 60% of my ability with my right arm. The boat is done. It's in line, waiting to go to, it's in line. I'm waiting for a call from Roger Stolte so he can go through the engine, make sure it's not going to have a problem. and then I can get on that gear after that point in time. It's going to be a process. There's product in some of them don't have product. The gear is in fairly good shape. Anybody's welcome to inspect it. Anybody's welcome to come along with me to see if there's an ability that I can possibly get the job done. I don't have a problem with that.
Have you been in contact with Shab explaining all of
I
these?
have.
factors?
We went through that. They supported me. They were in support of me up to the point of that I could not reach the deadline of April 15th. And there was just, if you can't make it, you didn't make it, I didn't make it. That's just point blank. I mean, I got to admit that we had I'm out in the field, in the middle of the field, doing this boat. And from the point of time that required time was put on till the time of April 15th, we probably had more days of rain and wind over 30 knots, which doesn't help you in doing the process, though we kept at it and still stayed with it. So I've pressed this through as best I can. I've got over $100,000 in equipment and stuff invested in this, and I'm afraid I don't want to lose it.
Did you ask Shab for more time before it would come to us?
Not at the point until I missed the meeting in which they made a decision to send it to you. I tried to make the last meeting, but it was canceled prior to, I don't know, they had some difficulty and couldn't make it, at which point in time I would have asked that they hold for a period of time in order to, go forward.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no, I stand by my suggestion. I'd give them both and give them time. I've been banged up and had a hard time baking for a couple of years there. I had both hips replaced, and I was fortunate enough to have a staff. If I didn't have a staff, it would have been who could cover for me. It would have been a whole different situation. So I am sympathetic to what happened. And so I would like to suggest, I'd like to make a motion that we
When you're not speaking.
give him a year to work this and prove himself.
So does the board want me to close the public hearing before we jump to a motion? Oh. Sorry, I think my internet went out for a second.
I can hear you and see you. Fine.
Sorry, yeah, but I couldn't see any of you. It froze up. Does the board want me to close the public hearing at this stage? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Matt, I just want you to restate your motion after the public hearing was closed.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to give 1 year to Ted Lambrecht to work both of these sites, and and if we're still at an impasse, if it hasn't if he hasn't been able to do it, then we'll deal with it then.
Is there a second to Matt's motion?
Second for discussion. I saw Christie's hand up.
Christy?
Thanks. I'm just wondering if we could add anything around a deadline for removing the equipment. It sounded like that was a really big concern of Shab, and I don't want to undermine what they put forward by kind of ignoring that.
Yeah, I was hoping for that too, Matt, maybe a shorter deadline.
Yeah, that's fine. If we want to break it into, into their recommendations, that's fine. But
what kind of deadline would you be comfortable with on sorting out the equipment, Christy?
Is it possible to ask Jeff that of what is a reasonable amount of time?
Jeff?
Sure. I think with Mr. Lambrecht's comments tonight that his boat is in working order. I mean, I think based upon the gear that we've observed in the field, I think if we had 30 days and then at least could provide the board an update from there, that would seem to be a sufficient amount of time.
Okay. Matt, would you be comfortable with an amendment to your motion? 30 days to get the gear in compliance and
I'll ask Mr. Lambrecht, will that work for you? Will you have the stuff cleared in 30 days?
Unmute. Is it muted?
No, you're good now.
Am I there?
Yep.
Oh,
Can you hear
good.
me?
30 days, I can get it. I can guarantee a portion of it. I can't guarantee you. I don't understand what, oh no, come on, I'm losing. I don't understand what is total compliance. I would need to have some of the gear in the water to hold existing stock. I can bring in anything that needs to be working and can be brought in. I can bring it all in, send it all back out again. There's any number of ways to go about it. I just got to get at it and start it and go. I don't know. 30 days, I can certainly get some stuff done and we can go from there and see what happens.
Okay, thank you. In purposes of making our motion, maybe we should do 45 or 60 and let them, so that there's time for them to discuss this and inspect it and so forth. Jason?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think we just need to be very clear on what we're asking for or what Jeff needs to make sure there is compliance. I understand this last year with shoulder surgery and COVID is everybody had challenges, but the 2.5 years before that, there was nothing, no activity. So I like giving a chance. I think we just need to be really specific so we all understand what we're expecting. So if it comes back 30 or 45 days, then we can make a better decision. And I don't know what those
Jeff?
are.
I think if it would help the board, I think we're also happy. Obviously, we want our leases to be in good working order. We do regular inspections on these guys, and starting in 3 days, we're required to do weekly inspections by the state on all working leases. So I think what our hopes is to have the gear that's been on the bottom for the last, 3 to 4 years be off the bottom, be serviced and be in good working order, and showing that it's being held on the lease in good working order from inspection. And I think we're happy to provide an inspection report back to the board about what we find and whether we believe the gear to be in good working order and being maintained well. We have concerns with obviously gear breaking free and being found in spots, and understand that happens, but I think we're happy to provide that level of reporting back if that would help, and then can have that discussion after, whether it's 30 or 45 days, whatever the board's will is.
I just love to give a little cushion. Matt and Christy, are you comfortable with 45?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the report back in 45 days from Jeff.
Erica?
Sorry, so is the motion still to give him 1 year to work both sites, but there needs to be reporting back pursuant to what Jeff just said within 45 days?
So my take is that the gear has to be in compliance within 45 days. Is that where we're heading? I mean, I don't want to be in a situation where something happens because of gear that's broken and someone ends up caught in it, or I don't know exactly what would happen, but
It's just Matt's motion was to give him 1 year, so I'm just not sure how they.
I think that Matt, if the gear can't get into compliance, or is the 1 year still part of it?
Not necessarily. Why don't we, I was going from a year, but if we're going to go 45 days, we could adjust the lease at the end of 45 or 60 days. I mean, that's, the goal. I mean, I don't want to step on Shab's toes either, but at the same time, when someone has put an effort in, even if the effort is just recent because of other issues, then I don't want to take that away either. So, so I'm trying to find a way to sort of have them get it into compliance as quickly as possible. And then once it's going, feel comfortable to extend it.
Okay, so do you want to revise your motion?
I'll remove my motion, let someone else.
Compliance within 45 days. Oh, Christy?
I was just going to say, if Matt wanted to remove his motion, and then we could, would we leave this public hearing, or we close the public hearing? Would we leave it open for 45 days?
I already closed it.
Okay. So we would just review this in 45 days, and at that point, decide if it should be extended for a year.
I'll second that motion, Christy.
Okay, just not to belabor this, but if he can get into compliance within 45 days to a level that Jeff and Shab are comfortable with, can we just say that beyond that, we'll give him a year? and then we'll revisit this so it doesn't have to come back to us? Because they're the ones who have to decide if this is compliant.
Yes, that, I'll add that to my motion.
I mean, then if 45 days he's not in compliance, then it comes back to us and we're going to have to schedule another public hearing to revoke his license, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And
Jeff,
are
does that
you
make
clear
sense?
on that, Mr.
Does that
Lambert?
make sense to you, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, the directions are very clear.
Okay.
And are they intelligent? Are we doing the right? Are they smart enough? Are they good?
Yeah, I mean, as the license holders, I mean, obviously our main goal is to have working leases that are in compliance and in good order, regardless of who holds them, whether it's Mr. Lambert or you, Matt. So we just want good working leases with good tenants and that things are going well.
Very good.
Okay. So Erica, do you need that? Who's making that motion? Christy.
And I seconded.
Erica, is that clear to you for the minutes?
Sorry, I was dealing with Melissa because she
Oh,
just,
okay.
and her computer shut down.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is Melissa back in? Should we wait for her to vote?
Not yet. Her computer shut down. I'm trying to get her back in.
Okay. I think we can just go to a vote. All those in favor by roll call, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Nat Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Town managers report.
Thank you. I just have one quick item. It's not on the agenda. We were just finalizing it earlier this week. We are working on a phased public access plan.
1 second. Mr. Lambert, thank you. You can log out. You don't have to stay for the
All
rest
right, I
of
appreciate it. Thank you.
Just get with natural resources to sort out.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Sorry, Libby.
That's okay. So we're working on the removal of public access restrictions to town offices, and we are planning to put these in place effective Monday, May 17th. Safety measures will still be in place at all public buildings. And we do ask that even though we are basically unlocking the doors, and the public will be able to enter, we still urge them to call ahead for an appointment, use email, text messaging, video conferencing as needed. We have drop boxes outside of every office. And sometimes it is just more convenient not to come into any of the town offices. Sometimes you need to, in which case appointments can certainly be made and, you know, people can come in, but we are feeling like it's about time to open back up. So again, there still will be safety measures, masks, face coverings will be requested in all of the buildings. That's it.
Thank you. I think people will be happy to hear that news. And we have just committee reports under our select board tonight. But don't worry, there's a very long agenda for next week. Anybody have anything? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn and everyone can have an early dinner tonight.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Nat Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. It carries unanimously. And sorry, Melissa, we missed you at the end. But I'll see you all next week.